Hello, and welcome to my 10-part video series titled The Year 6000 and Deciphering Revelation Using the Torah. This is part 6 of the video series. We are going to talk about the mark of the beast. This is the most controversial topic I discuss in my video series. My interpretation regarding the mark of the beast is unique, and you will not find this interpretation taught in many places, if at all anywhere. Even when I did a search in YouTube for this interpretation, I did not find it, not even one video. And this interpretation is not convenient for anyone in the world, not even myself. But it is the truth regarding the mark of the beast that many people do not want to admit. Even some Protestants and Catholics that have heard this interpretation from me hate it and reject it because it is too inconvenient for them to accept it. It is even inconvenient for all the megachurch pastors flying in their private jets and collecting tithes from thousands of foolish believers. But it is the most logical and most realistic interpretation regarding the mark of the beast. This interpretation may even shock you because it is beneath our very noses. And some of you may even come to hate me for telling you all of this. And some of you may even stop this video once you hear my interpretation, because you do not want to hear the truth. All humanity has been utterly deceived. There are many people that think that the mark of the beast will be microchips or 666 tattoos, or even that the mark of the beast is COVID vaccines or going to church on Sundays. All these theories are absurd and are very far from the truth. The mark of the beast is already here. And most of all humanity have already been marked, exactly as the prophecy said would happen, that everyone, rich and poor, would receive the mark of the beast. Even the famous and rich pop stars of the world brag about their money to the world in their music videos, not realizing that today, paper money is indeed the mark of the beast. I will explain why in this video. This is one of the most important videos you will ever see, where I finally unravel the truth behind the mystery of the mark of the beast. If you're watching this video from YouTube, be sure to click the subscribe button if you haven't already, to receive updates on new videos that I upload. And if you wish to donate to support these videos in our Kahila, please click on the donate button below if you're watching from YouTube, or visit the link that now appears on screen. I only accept food, not money. And I do not accept money from YouTube or any video platform for these videos. I do these videos for free. What many people do not realize is that the passage of the mark of the beast is figurative. Not that all humanity would be walking around with literal microchips on the forehead and right hand to buy and sell with. Revelation is a book of symbols and figurative language, which tells us about real things in a hidden way. For example, a beast in prophecy always symbolizes a nation. Not that there would literally be a beast roaming the earth with 7 heads. The first beast of Daniel symbolizes Babylon. The second beast of Daniel symbolizes Medo-Persia. The third beast of Daniel symbolizes Greece. The fourth beast of Daniel symbolizes Rome. These are real and literal nations, represented by figurative beasts in prophecy. Only those who study understand. Now, just as a beast is figurative, so is the mark of the beast. It is figurative, although both point to something real and literal. Receiving the mark of the beast on the forehead and right hand is also figurative, not literal. Even the seal that the 144,000 chosen receive on their foreheads is also figurative. Not that they would literally be walking around with the name of God tattooed on their foreheads. The Torah even forbids tattoos. The Apostle Paul reveals to us that the seal is receiving the Ruach HaKodesh, which then makes someone belong to God. Ruach HaKodesh means Holy Spirit in Hebrew. No one reaches the point of belonging to God like the angels do until they reach the point of receiving the Ruach HaKodesh, which is a unique event that always comes with a manifestation of power. And that is what the forehead symbolizes, being owned by the name imprinted on the forehead. There's an aspect about money that makes someone be owned by someone else, like a slave, to then be able to buy and sell, fulfilling having the mark of the beast on the forehead, which I will explain later in this video. And the right hand symbolizes authority. When Yeshua ascended to heaven, he sat at the right hand of God, which is the hand of authority. And when Yeshua was handed the scroll with the 7 seals, it was given to him from the right hand of God, the hand of authority. There's an aspect about money that then gives you authority to buy and sell, which I will explain later in this video. Keep these two things in mind about the forehead and right hand as I explain the mark of the beast. The next thing to understand is that the seal of God is permanent, hence seal, whereas the mark of the beast is not a seal, so it is not permanent. It is merely a mark, which can be removed, whereas the seal of God cannot be removed, because once someone receives the Ruach HaKodesh, there's no turning back. What will condemn someone regarding the mark of the beast is not having received it, because all humanity have already received it, but never having removed it after receiving it. This is why ultimately the book of Revelation says, "Come out of her, my people." To come out of her, you must first be inside her global financial system, which implies having the mark of the beast. I will explain this later. And removing the mark of the beast is not easy, because everyone needs it, even just to buy food and necessities, which is why it is the ultimate test of belief and obedience in our time. I will also explain this later. The next thing to understand is that the passage of the mark of the beast says that you cannot buy and sell unless you have the mark. This implies that the mark of the beast is money, because money is what is universally used to buy and sell with. But the general concept of money is not the mark of the beast, because even the Torah permits money, and even Yeshua and his disciples use money when it was gold and silver before, which is good and necessary for a society to function. But the mark of the beast is a certain form of money that exists today that is evil, which all humanity have now adopted to buy and sell with. There's one absurd theory out there where some people say that the mark of the beast is your thoughts and actions. But this cannot be so, because thoughts and actions have nothing to do with money and buying and selling. And it's way too easy to think it's thoughts and actions versus accepting the reality of what the mark of the beast truly represents. The clue that definitively confirms the truth regarding the mark of the beast is 666. The passage says, "Here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Many people have gone almost crazy trying to figure out what 666 means. And some have even tried numerizing names of popes and kings in the past to say that their names are equivalent to 666, among other absurd theories. Remember what I told you before. All symbols in the New Testament and in the book of Revelation are based in the Tanakh, the Old Testament. We only need to look at one passage in the Tanakh to understand what 666 means. Let's read it in 1 Kings 10:14. The weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. This verse is repeated again in 2 Chronicles 9:13. The man 666 corresponds to is Solomon. He is the man in the passage of 666 that says, the number of a man. And he received 666 talents of gold. There are three things to understand with 666 talents of gold. Gold was money for thousands of years, whose value was based on its weight. And talent was the name of a standard weight in Israel, used to measure gold, to buy and sell according to the weight in gold. And 666 is the number of the weight, meaning its value. This is the mark of the beast in its two forms, the name and the number of the name. This is not a coincidence between these two passages making reference to the same 666. They are related, and the passage in the Tanakh mentioning 666 reveals to us what 666 in Revelation is secretly telling us. What the prophecy is basically telling us is that all humanity would be left buying and selling with mere names of weights and its respective numbers, which is already happening everywhere in the world. Let me explain. As I said, for thousands of years, gold was money, whose value was based on weight. Silver was also money, whose value was also based on weight. For example, someone might have purchased a property with 10 troy ounces of gold. That is how commerce was done in antiquity, using gold and silver. And these metals were valued according to their weight. Every nation had a name for their own standard weight, which they used to measure gold, to buy and sell with. In England, the name of their weight was pound. In Colombia and in Mexico, the name of their weight was peso, which means weight in Spanish. In Japan, the name of their weight was yen. In Israel, the name of their weight was shekel. And in the USA, the name of their weight was dollar. These standard weights were used on a balance to weigh gold and silver. And gold and silver coins were also measured and minted at the precise weight they were named by. But something changed in the USA in 1933. By executive order of the President of the USA, everyone was forced to turn in their gold to the Federal Reserve Bank in exchange for gold certificates. If they didn't turn in their gold, they would be thrown in prison. The gold certificates were issued at around $21 per troy ounce of gold. and people were able to buy and sell using the gold certificates. So it became paper money. Yet people back then knew that the money was not the paper, but the gold it represented in the bank. This is why all the old paper monies of the world had redeemable in gold written on them. If people then had been given just paper without it representing any gold, then they would not have fallen for that fraud and would have laughed, because people back then knew gold was money, not mere paper, as people foolishly today think. People today are clueless about real money and sometimes even foolishly kill themselves over mere paper that society today calls money. And then a year later, in 1934, something again changed. The Federal Reserve Bank and the USA government devalued the paper money to around $35 per troy ounce of gold. And this is when the theft truly began. The paper money people had in their hand now redeemed less gold than what they gave the Federal Reserve Bank. And the decades continued, and they continued devaluing the paper money. By this time, all the nations of the earth also began establishing central banks that took in everyone's gold in exchange for paper money. And in 1971, something worse happened with President Nixon. The USA removed the backing of gold from the paper money, which then made paper money into fiat currency as well. Paper money became mere paper that represented nothing, but continued circulating as money because the government decreed it so, which is what fiat currency is: debased money that the government decrees to be legal. Paper money and fiat currency are two different things, although related. Paper money was once issued to represent gold, so paper money was also commodity money before. But then it was devalued, and then the backing of gold was removed from it. So now paper money is also fiat currency. Fiat currency is a form of money that has no intrinsic value and also represents nothing. It merely exists just because the government decrees it to exist and gives it an arbitrary value, hence fiat. It is worse than paper money, because at least the paper money that was originally issued represented gold in the bank. But now it represents absolutely nothing. It is merely just paper and names and numbers. And that is truly when humanity was left buying with mere names and numbers, which is the mark of the beast in its two forms, the name and the number of the name. These former names of weights that were called pound and peso and yen and shekel and dollar became mere names that no longer meant names of weights nor even gold. They became false names of weights, which is forbidden by the Torah. You shall not falsify measures of weight. In the Tanakh, we have come to understand that 666 is making reference to weights. And in the Torah, we come to know that God forbids false weights, which is what fiat currency is. This is why knowledge of the Torah and Tanakh is so important to understand Revelation and also the mark of the beast. Therefore, merely possessing paper money and fiat currency is possessing false weights, which is a sin. And this is ultimately why paper money and fiat currency is the mark of the beast, because merely possessing it is sin. And all humanity is caused to sin by merely accepting it as money. Just accepting this evil form of money once causes a person to have the mark of the beast and is therefore already condemned. The true mark of the beast is therefore paper money and fiat currency. Every paper money in every nation is issued under the name of a currency that was formerly known as a name of a weight, which people today use to buy and sell with, which is the name of the beast. This is the first form of the mark of the beast. And then mere numbers based on the name of that currency are deducted from one bank account and added to another bank account, which is the number of the name. This is the second form of the mark of the beast. With the advent of technology, many transactions are not even done with paper anymore, but just mere numbers. The amount of money people have in their bank accounts are merely just numbers saved in some database in a computer server and represent nothing. It is not real money. This is the number of the name. And worse than fiat currency is cryptocurrency, because it has no government backing at all. Even though fiat currency is evil, it at least has government backing to try to control it and to try to stabilize it. But cryptocurrency has no government backing, so it is therefore much more volatile than fiat currency. This is why many who have exchanged fiat currency for cryptocurrency have had huge losses. Yet cryptocurrency is also fiat currency because it also represents nothing real. Always remember this: gold and silver are true money. It always has been for thousands of years and always will be. So what exactly is money? Money is something everyone agrees is valuable, and everyone agrees to use it to exchange it for goods and services. Gold is by nature good to be money because everyone agrees it is valuable, and it is sufficiently common to be circulated as money, but sufficiently rare to be valuable. Silver is also by nature good to be money, and everyone also agrees it is valuable, yet it is more common than gold, so it is therefore less valuable than gold. And gold and silver can be minted into coins to certain weights, therefore making it very practical to be money. This is why one philosopher once said, although gold and silver are not by nature money, money is by nature gold and silver. And whatever weight in gold or silver there was, that was its value, therefore making the value of gold and silver real and tangible and measurable. Other commodities could be money also, but then problems arise. For example, rice could be used as money, but not everyone eats rice. So not everyone will accept rice as payment for goods and services. Yet this is not the case with gold and silver, because since ancient times, everyone has always universally agreed that gold and silver are valuable, therefore making it ideal to be money. Always remember this: any money that does not have a true intrinsic value will always lose value and will eventually collapse. So paper money and fiat currency are destined to lose value and eventually collapse all over the world. History has already given us examples regarding what eventually happens to the value of paper money and fiat currency. I will discuss this later in the video. Paper money and fiat currency is a worse form of false weight than the false weights thieves used in ancient times, because what we have today is much more subtle and also much more widespread all over the world, involving every single human on the earth. One has to really study much and also understand history to finally realize that paper money and fiat currency are false weights. Yet the thieves in ancient times carried two stones with them, labeled with the same name of a weight, but one was a heavier version than the other, which they used to steal more gold when it was put on a balance. These were false weights, which the Torah forbids. Whereas the false weights of today are paper and names and numbers with an imaginary value, which were formerly issued to represent gold, then were devalued, then the backing of gold was removed from them, making it into mere paper and mere names and mere numbers, representing nothing and having no intrinsic value. A paper bill printed with a 1 is no different intrinsically than a bill printed with a 10, because it represents nothing, not even the weight of the paper itself. The number is merely an imaginary number, and its value is merely an illusion of value. One day it is worth one value, then another day it is worth another value. One day 10,000 of that paper money will buy you a house. Then another day 10,000 of that paper money will only buy you a coffee. Whereas 1 troy ounce of gold today is the same troy ounce of gold tomorrow, because the value of gold is based on its weight. And this is good for society, because it causes prices to become stable. And if one house is purchased for 20 troy ounces of gold, in 1,000 years it will be worth the same 20 troy ounces of gold. This is good for a society. When gold is money, inflation does not exist. But this is not the case with paper money and fiat currency. Inflation makes prices rise and rise continually. This is why in the USA, 1 troy ounce of gold is now worth around $2,330 US, whereas in 1933, 1 troy ounce of gold was worth only around $21. The inflation has risen the price of gold into the thousands. And in Colombia, 1 troy ounce of gold is now worth 9,629,709 pesos. Whereas in 1933, 1 troy ounce of gold was worth only around 21 Colombian pesos. The inflation has risen the price of gold into the millions in Colombian pesos. This is severe devaluation. Colombians buy and sell in the denominations of thousands and millions and billions and think this is normal, not understanding that this is not normal and is the result of high inflation. It is not that the value of gold has gone up, because 1 troy ounce of gold in 1934 is the same 1 troy ounce of gold today in 2025. It is because the value of paper money and fiat currency has gone down astronomically. In the richer nations, it is less noticeable, since the devaluation is in the thousands. But in the poorer nations, the devaluation is in the millions, and in some cases in the trillions, and in the worst case ever seen, in the quadrillions. But people have not really noticed, because inflation is now seen as something normal. But it is not normal. It is fraud and theft. Our grandfathers and great-grandfathers were able to purchase property without debt, with only 2 or 3 years of work and minimum salary. Yet now it takes many more years of work to purchase a property without debt. This is the overall damage of inflation caused by fiat currency. The governments in the world like to brag about how low inflation has reached in a given month, but they do not tell you how much purchasing power inflation has taken away from everyone over the years and decades. When money was gold, everything was extremely affordable. People were able to buy not only just one property, but several properties, even with just minimum salary. Construction was also cheap, which is why buildings in antiquity were built with such detail and architectural beauty, whereas today buildings are built cheap and basic because everything is so much more expensive than before because of inflation as a result of fiat currency. People today have forgotten what true money is, which is gold and silver. They think that paper money is the true money, which is far from the truth. Humanity has been brainwashed and deceived. And so the prophecy has already come true that everyone great and small and rich and poor would receive the mark of the beast. Everyone in the world has already accepted paper money and fiat currency, even the homeless on the streets. Perhaps the only ones that have not, other than babies, are the secluded indigenous populations of the world. And so all are already condemned through it. This is why so few people will be saved at the return of Yeshua, because most of all humanity have already been marked. The mark of the beast is the definitive characteristic that truly identifies those who have set themselves apart for God and those who have not, because those who truly love God will go as far as forsaking money for the sake of obedience, whereas those who love money more than God will not be willing to inconvenience themselves by renouncing money for the sake of obedience. It is a true test of belief and obedience in our time. This is why in the context of the mark of the beast, the book of Revelation says, "Here is the perseverance of the set-apart ones, the ones who keep the commands of God." The commands of God are in the Torah, and the Torah commands, "You shall not falsify measures of weight," which therefore forbids paper money and fiat currency. Fiat currency is false money. It is a false weight. It is fraud and robbery. So, the mark of the beast is actually money, but not gold and silver, which is true and righteous and good money, whose value is based on weight. And it is the money used by Yeshua and his disciples. But paper money and fiat currency is the mark of the beast, whose value is merely an illusion. It is the money of today that is the mark of the beast. And to accept this money is to figuratively receive the mark of the beast. If you accept this money just once, you already have the mark of the beast, and you are already condemned unless you renounce it once and for all. Not only does the Torah forbid this form of money, but even the founding fathers of the USA were also completely against paper money and fiat currency. Take a look at these quotes from the founding fathers of the USA speaking against paper money. They hated it because they knew it was fraud and robbery. Even the US Constitution says that only gold and silver can be money. The paper money and fiat currency that is issued to everyone to buy and sell with is actually unconstitutional and illegal. Not only does the Torah forbid it, but even the secular US Constitution also forbids it. It is illegal and forbidden money. And what many people also do not realize is that they are slowly being impoverished because of paper money and fiat currency. Now that the money has been completely debased to mere paper and mere names and mere numbers, those that issue this form of money continue to devalue it, to then cause inflation of prices, to then cause debt. Because as everything becomes more and more expensive, people then need to resort to debt in the form of credit cards and loans for vehicles and mortgages to buy a house. And this is what it means to have the mark of the beast on the forehead, debt of fiat currency. Because debt is what makes a person a slave to his lender. And so, by having debt of fiat currency to buy and sell with, a person figuratively receives the mark of the beast on the forehead because they become enslaved to their lenders that lend them fiat currency. Whereas having the mark of the beast on the right hand symbolizes merely having fiat currency, which gives someone authority to buy and sell with it. Having the mark of the beast on the forehead is worse than having it on the right hand because debt is involved. If you stop making payments of fiat currency towards the mortgage on your house, then it will be taken away from you because the house truly belongs to the bank, not to you. Whereas if you have the full amount of fiat currency to purchase a house, then it is all yours. Both are still evil nonetheless, because they are both transactions based on fiat currency, but one is associated with debt, whereas the other is not. So the mark of the beast on the forehead is worse than the mark of the beast on the right hand. And slowly the banks become the owners of everything through debt, along with all the gold they have stolen from all humanity, which is now kept in the vaults of the central banks. It is the largest scheme of robbery the world has ever seen. Banks like to keep inflation low at around 2%, so people do not notice they are slowly being impoverished. But eventually, either inflation rises too much and becomes unsustainable, or some major event happens and causes it to destabilize. And so fiat currency collapses in value in the form of hyperinflation, which is uncontrolled inflation. One merchant raises their prices, then another merchant raises their prices in response. Then another merchant raises their prices. And then a gigantic domino effect of uncontrolled price increases ensues among all merchants everywhere, each trying to catch up and outdo the other. One day a coffee might be worth $2. Then the next day it is worth $20. Then the next day it is worth $200. Then the next day it is worth $2,000. Then the next day it is worth $20,000. Then the next day it is worth $200,000. Then the next day it is worth $2 million. This is hyperinflation. And whatever money anyone has as paper money or as mere numbers in their bank account suddenly cannot afford the sudden rise of prices, which causes all commerce to collapse and people to go hungry. This is why it was common to see stacks of money just to buy one little thing in places where hyperinflation has happened in the world, like in Venezuela and nations in Africa, and even in Germany in former times. The value of everyone's salaries and savings and pensions evaporates like vapor. And governments try to keep up with the hyperinflation by printing new paper money at new denominations. In nations where hyperinflation has happened, Paper money in the denomination of billions and trillions and even quintillions were seen. The worst hyperinflation seen in history was the one that happened in Hungary. Paper money reached the denomination of quintillions, which is an absurd number. And then they create a new currency with a different name to eliminate zeros from the previous currency that collapsed. But the damage of hyperinflation was already done, and people's savings evaporated with no recovery. It is fraud and theft. This type of inflation doesn't happen when money is gold and silver. This problem only happens with fiat currency. This form of money is without a doubt evil because it brings a nation to extreme misery. All society collapses because the root of a nation is money. And when the money collapses, it makes everything in a nation collapse. This is why long ago, a French philosopher once said that the value of paper money eventually returns to its true intrinsic value, zero. And when it does return to its true value of zero, it does so in the form of hyperinflation. Because even though fiat currency loses its value quickly, in a matter of days and hours, people still try to cling to it out of desperation because it is the only money they have. And so they themselves continue to help cause the hyperinflation by still accepting it and using it as money. When hyperinflation comes, people can no longer buy because everything becomes too expensive. And so merchants can no longer sell either. Employers can no longer pay employees either because their salaries must also be increased to catch up with the higher prices of everything. Companies can no longer buy materials because everything is too expensive. Everyone's savings become worthless and can no longer buy anything. Also, salaries lag behind the hyperinflation, and what people earn can no longer afford the basics. Pension payments can no longer afford to pay for the basics. The value of money evaporates during hyperinflation. So, absolutely everything collapses in a nation. And then comes anarchy and riots and strikes and protests and looting and thefts and violence when hyperinflation happens. People become enraged that they can no longer afford the basics and that the value of their money has evaporated. Governments lose control over cities and entire nations, and gangs begin to take control. Stock markets collapse. There are also bank runs, and banks close, and people cannot access their money in their bank accounts or take paper money out of the banks. Food and medicines and products become scarce. Public services are interrupted. It becomes severe chaos. Several nations have already suffered the damage of hyperinflation because of fiat currency, like Venezuela. Venezuela is a good example of what happens to a nation when hyperinflation comes. Yet it is not the only hyperinflation that has happened in the world. Many people like to blame Maduro, the president of Venezuela, for the hyperinflation problem in that nation. But they do not realize that the true root cause of the problem is fiat currency and everyone's acceptance of it. Everyone is at fault for the hyperinflation there and everywhere else in the world because all have accepted the false weight of fiat currency, which impoverishes the world. And in fact, it is everyone's acceptance of this evil form of money that causes it to continue to circulate. So everyone is at fault, not just those who print and issue this money. If everyone stopped accepting this form of money and all exchanged all their money they had for gold and silver or any other commodity, even food, the problem of inflation would stop immediately, because fiat currency would have been converted into something real, and then everyone could continue buying and selling with commodities without any inflation at all. But because no one wants to be inconvenienced in doing this, or be the only one that does this and be shut out of the global financial system, so then fiat currency continues circulating because of everyone's mutual approval and consent and acceptance. This is one reason why anyone who receives the mark of the beast is worthy of the lake of lava, because they are culpable in this evil global financial system that impoverishes all humanity. It is like being allied with a great mafia that steals from all humanity, and so making someone truly deserving of the lake of lava. Here is a list of nations where hyperinflations have happened in the world. You would think that people would catch on that fiat currency is bad for society, but people continue living in ignorance, only worrying about their day-to-day activities, not realizing that they are part of the problem. As you can see, paper money has failed many times throughout history. But why do banks and governments continue to issue this terrible form of money to the world? Because they try to profit from this fraud. But what they do not understand is that if the legs that support them collapse, then they too collapse. If society collapses, then they too collapse. But greed blinds them from understanding this truth. Eventually, all fiat currencies in the world will enter a state of hyperinflation with the destruction of the prostitute of Babylon, which represents Vatican City. She is the head of the global financial system. Therefore, her destruction will also be the collapse of the entire global financial system. This is why, according to the book of Revelation, the merchants of the earth will wail for her, because no one will buy their merchandise anymore, which means global financial collapse. This is one detail about the end times many people do not realize and understand, that there will be a global financial collapse. They are foolishly expecting the Antichrist to come and microchips to come, not realizing the Antichrist is already here, which are the Roman popes, ruling the world clandestinely from Vatican City in Rome through a global financial system. And the mark of the beast is paper money and fiat currency, issued through all central banks of the world that all trace back to one bank, the Vatican Bank in Vatican City, in Rome. The coming global financial collapse will be unlike anything the world has ever seen. In the next video, I will explain more about why the prostitute of Babylon is Vatican City and how her destruction will cause the collapse of the global financial system. This will bring into fulfillment the words of the prophet Ezekiel, who said gold and silver will be thrown on the streets like garbage in the time of the end. Gold and silver was his way of expressing money in his time, which today is paper money and fiat currency. Hyperinflation will result in higher denominations of paper money being printed, and the old bills with lesser denominations will become worthless. and will be thrown on the streets like garbage, as we have already seen happen in several hyperinflations in the world. That is how the words of Ezekiel will come into fulfillment. And that prophecy has already come into fulfillment in Venezuela, for example, where money was thrown on the streets like garbage because it was worthless. Yet it will come into greater fulfillment all over the world once the prostitute of Babylon is destroyed. And this is also why, according to the prophet Amos, the entire earth will be shaken and the sun will be darkened, which happens at the return of Yeshua, because of the sin of false weights, which today is paper money and fiat currency, which is the mark of the beast, which impoverishes the entire world. As such, there is only one way to remove the mark of the beast: by renouncing paper money and fiat currency once and for all, which involves getting rid of all of it and never accepting it again. Doing this will completely remove you from the global financial system and will truly set you apart. You will not even be able to go to the store in the corner to buy a mere water bottle. You will be completely blocked from buying and selling at all. Merchants will not even accept gold and silver if you offer it to them to buy anything. And this is why not having the mark of the beast is a true test of belief and obedience in our time, because people need money for sustenance. And God knows the importance of money, which is why he appointed it to be a definitive test between those that are truly his and those that are not. If it were easy to do, then it wouldn't be a test. Just as even Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were put to a life or death test, worship an idol or die, and they refused and were put into a fiery furnace. Yet God saved them and blessed them because of their obedience. And so in likewise manner it is now. Whoever inconveniences themselves and exits the global financial system for the sake of obedience will be saved. But whoever does not and remains in the convenience and in comfort inside the global financial system will eventually be condemned at the return of Yeshua because of disobedience. This is why the book of Revelation says, "Come out of her, my people, that you may not partake in her sins, that you may not partake in her plagues." Her refers to Vatican City, which not only means coming out of her false Roman Catholic religion and all its lies, but also its global financial system of paper money and fiat currency, all centered there in Vatican City in Rome. She is clandestinely the head of the global financial system because all central banks of the world trace back to one bank, the Vatican Bank. We will discuss this further in the next video. But even so, the convenience of remaining inside the global financial system is very short because it will eventually collapse before the return of Yeshua. And whoever depended on money will be left in ruin and in hunger. This is also another reason why it is better to willingly inconvenience yourself by exiting the global financial system now versus to be inconvenienced later by force when it collapses. Either way, we are all going to be inconvenienced. So it is better to inconvenience ourselves now by exiting the global financial system. And there is an intelligent way to exit the global financial system by exchanging fiat currency for things you need. The Torah permits exchanging what is unclean for necessities, as it is written in Deuteronomy 14:21. And even Yeshua once said, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's." And the book of Revelation also says, "Pay her back even as she has paid," which is fiat currency. So, exchange fiat currency for everything you need: food, water, necessities, property, gold, and silver, until you deplete yourself to zero once and for all. If you are wise, then stock up on enough food and water and necessities until the year 6000, so you don't have to depend on money at all until the return of Yeshua. In video number 4, I explained that the year 6000 is in the autumn of 2026, based on my calculations, which are based on the genealogies and timelines of the scriptures. It is up until that time that I recommend that you stock up on food and water and necessities and have extra to share with others. And in this way, you will also withstand the global financial collapse and have everything you need during that time. Or, if you wish to go above and beyond, get rid of all your money by burning a portion of it or all of it. Either approach is acceptable, although burning it all takes greater belief, because a person that burns all his money must now believe that God will continually provide, versus someone who exchanges all his money for a large supply of food. And if you have debt of fiat currency, either pay it off if you can, or if you cannot, then just stop paying it altogether to make your exit out of the global financial system. Since the money is not real, then the debt is also not real. So there is no sin in not paying it back. What debt of fiat currency is really intended to do is to keep everyone inside the global financial system by forcing them to need to work to earn fiat currency, to pay their debts of fiat currency. But you can walk away and stop paying your debts. However, there may be consequences in doing this, because if you have a mortgage, the bank will take away your home. Or if you have an auto loan, the bank will take away your car. So this is why I say, if you can, pay your debts. But if you cannot right away, then simply walk away. Some debts are simply too large to pay back quickly, like student loans or very large credit card debts. So in these cases, it is best just to walk away. It is urgent that you exit the global financial system as soon as possible, because you can die at any moment, bringing you to the judgment having the mark of the beast. And also the return of Yeshua is extremely near, and also the global financial collapse that happens right before his return. So the longer you wait to exit the global financial system, the more difficult it will be later on. And when you exit the global financial system, you must stop accepting all paper money and fiat currency. This even includes pension payments. Absolutely no more fiat currency can be received by you at any moment in time after you exit the global financial system. If you do receive money again, then you never left it and still have had the mark of the beast all that time. So make the decisive choice to renounce money once and for all, and never look back, so that it truly counts. Throughout this time, after you exit the global financial system, you may accept payment in gold and silver, and food or any other commodity, as was done in ancient times, when money was gold and silver. God will bless you exceedingly because of this choice to obey his command by exiting the global financial system. And you will find that new opportunities will present themselves to you by the favor of God, because you are now acting by belief and obedience. even though many people will simply think you are crazy. Yet the crazy ones are them, for having accepted this money that impoverishes them and will also condemn them. And another thing to consider, God will always provide food and water to those who believe in Yeshua and truly obey all the commands of the Torah and get rid of all money. This is why Yeshua said, "Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." This is a promise. A true believer may suffer persecution and martyrdom, but never starvation. God will always provide food and water at the very least to those who truly obey and believe in Him. God fed the entire nation of Israel for 40 years in the desert, and they were rebellious. So how much more will He feed those who obey all His commands and believe? Even if all the food in the world runs out, God will then surely send an angel to feed those who believe and obey. This is why not having the mark of the beast is also a test of belief, because renouncing money involves having belief that God will still provide food and water. But those who do not exit the global financial system will suffer with hunger and financial ruin when it collapses, because they are not in full obedience. And their prayers to God to provide them with food will be ignored, because they are not in obedience and have not renounced money. This knowledge I am imparting to you regarding the mark of the beast is extremely valuable, which you will not hear taught almost anywhere else. And it is one of the most important pieces of information you absolutely need to know to come into full obedience to God. My hope is that you are blessed with this information, leading you to stock up on food and water and necessities and everything you need to exit the global financial system and have everything you need until the return of Yeshua and be found without the mark of the beast at His return, so that you are truly saved. The content of these videos is also found in greater depth in written form on my website, wisdomofgod.us. Go to teachings and search for the titles I've indicated just now. Or if you're watching from YouTube, click on the links in the description below. This video is also available in Spanish at sabiduriadedios.com. I've also provided a link to the Spanish version in the description below. And finally, whatever questions you have, feel free to drop a comment or send me a message from my website, or directly send me an email at the address I've just indicated. May God grant you wisdom and understanding in the name of Yeshua.